On the morning of June 30th, 1908, the world was about to witness something that seemed impossible. Deep in the remote forests of Siberia, where endless stretches of pine and tundra dominate the landscape, a sudden fireball tore across the sky. People living hundreds of miles away described it as brighter than the sun, streaking from horizon to horizon. Some thought it was the end of the world. Others thought the heavens had opened. But within moments, reality proved even stranger. At 7:17 a.m., a massive explosion rocked the region near the Podkamennaya Tunguska River. It was so powerful that people felt the shockwave from more than 500 miles away. In villages, windows shattered, walls cracked, and horses bolted in terror. Those who were closest to the blast were knocked unconscious. One man recalled being thrown from his chair by an invisible force, as though a giant hand had slapped the earth itself. When the dust finally settled, the scene left behind was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Over 80 million trees had been flattened in an instant. For hundreds of square miles, the Siberian taiga looked as if it had been crushed by some colossal, invisible hammer. And at the very center, ground zero, there was no crater, just scorched earth, blackened trees, and silence. To understand the scale of this disaster, imagine this. The explosion released energy equivalent to 1,000 atomic bombs. Like the one dropped on Hiroshima. It was the most powerful impact event in recorded human history. And yet, strangely, not a single confirmed human death was ever reported. Mostly because the area was so sparsely populated. If the blast had occurred just a few hours later, over a city like Moscow or London, it would have wiped it completely off the map. But what exactly happened that morning in Siberia? That question has haunted scientists, historians, and conspiracy theorists for more than a century. And to this day, the Tunguska Event remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Eyewitness accounts are some of the most chilling pieces of this puzzle. Local Awenki hunters told stories of a massive ball of fire streaking through the sky, followed by a deafening crack that split the heavens. One man described it as if the sky had been torn in two. Another said the heat was so intense he felt his clothes were about to ignite. A group of reindeer herders, miles from the blast, reported being hurled to the ground as their animals scattered in panic. The strangest part, for nights afterward, skies across Europe and Asia glowed eerily bright. In London, people said they could read newspapers at midnight without any artificial light. Photographs taken during those days show unusually illuminated skies, leading many to believe that something massive had entered Earth's atmosphere and altered it. But what was it? The most widely accepted scientific explanation is that a comet or asteroid, about 150 to 200 feet wide, entered Earth's atmosphere at around 33,000 miles per hour. Instead of hitting the ground, it exploded in what's known as an airburst, releasing nearly all of its energy about 5 miles above the Earth's surface. The blast wave from this detonation flattened the forest below, creating the bizarre radial pattern of trees that researchers later documented, millions of trunks lying like matchsticks, all pointing away from the center. Yet, if it was an asteroid or comet, where's the crater? Where are the fragments? That has been the puzzle. Despite dozens of expeditions, scientists have never recovered a single large piece of extraterrestrial rock from Tunguska. Some small particles containing unusual minerals have been found, but nothing conclusive enough to settle the debate once and for all. This absence of physical evidence has opened the door to countless alternative theories, some scientific, some wild, and some that sound straight out of science fiction. One theory suggests the explosion wasn't caused by an asteroid, but by a fragment of a comet composed mostly of ice. Unlike rock, the ice would have completely vaporized upon entering the atmosphere, leaving almost no trace behind. This would explain the lack of a crater and large debris. But skeptics argue that the intense glow in the skies afterward points to something far stranger than ice. Another theory proposes that Tunguska was caused by a natural gas explosion. The Siberian region is rich in underground methane reserves, and some scientists suggest that a massive release of gas could have ignited, creating the massive blast. However, this doesn't fully explain the reports of a fireball streaking across the sky before the explosion. Then there are the more outlandish ideas. Some researchers in the 20th century speculated that the Tunguska event was actually the crash of an alien spacecraft. The absence of a crater and the sheer scale of destruction led them to believe that perhaps an advanced ship, experiencing catastrophic failure, detonated over Siberia. In fact, in the 1960s, 2 Soviet scientists went so far as to publish a paper suggesting that Tunguska was the result of controlled annihilation by an extraterrestrial vehicle trying to avoid a direct impact with Earth. Others have suggested the explosion might have been caused by a mini-8 black hole grazing through Earth's atmosphere, releasing unimaginable amounts of energy before vanishing into space again. While fascinating, most physicists dismiss this idea, pointing out that such an event would have left very different geological traces. Perhaps the most mysterious aspect of Tunguska is how little it was investigated at the time. Russia in 1908 was on the brink of revolution, struggling with political turmoil, and Siberia was incredibly remote. It wasn't until nearly 2 decades later, in 1927, that the first serious expedition, led by scientist Leonid Kulik, made it to the site. What Kulik and his team found was staggering. Hundreds of square miles of trees knocked flat, all pointing outward in a radial pattern. Yet even at the epicenter, there was no crater. Instead, trees still stood upright, stripped of branches and bark, as if blasted by heat from above. Kulik believed the cause was a meteorite, and he even convinced the Soviet government to fund further expeditions in search of valuable iron. But despite years of searching, he never found the massive chunks he was expecting. His frustration only deepened the mystery. The human impact, too, should not be forgotten. Local Ewenki communities spoke of great fear following the event. They believed it was a curse from their gods, punishing the people for broken taboos. Shamans conducted rituals to cleanse the land, and many avoided the area for decades, considering it sacred or haunted. Even today, some parts of Siberia around Tunguska remain shrouded in folklore and superstition. Modern science has continued to probe the mystery. In 2013, another clue emerged. A meteor exploded over Chelyabinsk, Russia, injuring over 1,000 people. It was far smaller than the Tunguska object, yet the blast shattered windows and caused chaos across the city. Scientists quickly realized that the Tunguska event was simply Chelyabinsk magnified 100-fold. The similarities gave more weight to the asteroid airburst theory. Still, questions remain. Why was there no crater? Why was the glow in the skies so intense for weeks? Why has no large fragment ever been conclusively recovered? And perhaps the most chilling question of all, could it happen again? The answer, unfortunately, is yes. Tunguska was not a once-in-a-lifetime event, it was a warning. Objects of similar size to the Tunguska impactor pass near Earth far more often than most of us realize. Astronomers estimate that Tunguska-scale impacts occur on our planet roughly once every few hundred years. If one were to strike over a populated area, the destruction would be beyond imagination. Neil deGrasse Tyson once pointed out that Tunguska was equivalent to a city destroyer arriving once a century. Imagine an entire metropolis, New York, London, or Tokyo flattened in an instant, with millions of lives lost. That is the real lesson of Tunguska. Earth is not immune to cosmic events, and our survival depends on vigilance. In fact, in 2019, NASA revealed that a space rock the size of Tunguska had passed within 45,000 miles of Earth, near miss. In astronomical terms, we got lucky. But luck is not a strategy. The Tunguska event is a reminder that our planet drifts through a cosmic shooting gallery, and sometimes, we are in the wrong place at the wrong time. So what really happened in 1908? Was it a comet, an asteroid, a bizarre natural gas explosion, or something beyond our understanding, alien, supernatural, or cosmic in ways we can't yet explain? More than a century later, the mystery remains unsolved. But one thing is certain. On that summer morning in Siberia, the Earth was struck by a force so immense, so terrifying, that it shook not only the land but the imagination of generations to come. The Tunguska event reminds us that history is not just shaped by kings, wars, and civilizations, but by the random, uncontrollable power of the universe itself. And sometimes, the scariest part of history is knowing that it can happen again. If you enjoyed this journey through Mystery Vault, make sure to subscribe and join us for more mysteries of history and the world around us.